Carlos Sainz rises from the hospital bed to secure victory at the 2024 Australian Grand Prix. But as for Max Verstappen, well, his race came to an early, fiery end. From RacingNews365.com, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm joined as always by lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, Sainz stunning, 16 days on from his surgery, Ferrari's first 1-2 since the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix, but so much of the race was impacted by Verstappen's early retirement, which caught us all by surprise.
Correct, everybody's surprised, including everyone within Red Bull, I would assume, because we got something to talk about slightly different, other than a Max Verstappen Grand Prix victory, because that's all we've done since the Singapore Grand Prix of last year, when, guess who? Carlos Sainz won that race as well. So, tremendous achievement by Carlos at the end of the day. But yeah, Max, a retirement, for his first mechanical retirement for 2 years, which was also in Australia. His first retirement after a run of 43 consecutive Grand Prix without such an incident. As I say, just something different to talk about, isn't it? It's nice to have that for a change. And again, I know Max Verstappen and Red Bull fans are going to bemoan us for going on like this, but come on, guys! We need something like this on the odd occasion, just to, as I say, after those first two Grand Prix in Bahrain and Saudi, especially Saudi, there was this sense of foreboding that, oh my God, here we go again. So at least, as I say, we've got something a little bit different. And just a word on Carlos Sainz, and just to prove that I do read the comments below our video articles. Somebody mentioned yesterday, come on guys, this isn't open heart surgery. I was back after my appendix operation after 8 days. Now that person didn't say what they did as a job, but I can imagine it wasn't driving a Formula One car at 200 miles an hour with their body being subjected to 5 and 6 G-forces under braking going into numerous corners. So whilst that person's recovery was commendable, I think they said after 8 days.
I mean, 8 days, that's fair play. I take a bow to that, because I could never.
After appendix operation, Carlos Sainz was driving a Formula One car under extreme circumstances after 14 days. So come on, let's give him a little bit of credit for his victory and his performance over the Grand Prix weekend. So as I say, just proof if it were needed. I do look at the comments below this video blog. Thank you.
But what's staggering actually is that after the race, Fred Vasseur mentioned that actually ahead of the weekend on Friday before FP1, Sainz wasn't 100% sure if he was going to be fit enough. He's not only shown that he was fit enough, he's, reborn almost. Sainz has put himself well and truly in the shop window for Red Bull, for Mercedes, possibly even Aston Martin. Is this now a case of teams are going to be fighting quickly to get his signature?
You've just preempted with that question what my takeaway was going to be from the Grand Prix weekend. Just to give you a little run through, folks, that Nick and I discussed what the topics are going to be before we come on air like this. The last topic was going to be, what's the big takeaway from the weekend? Well, I actually hadn't mentioned.
Do we save that then?
No. I actually hadn't mentioned to Nick what my takeaway was going to be, but might as well mention it now. My takeaway should be is somebody needs to sign Carlos up as soon as possible, because, okay, people are waiting for Max to see what he might be doing for definite, but Carlos, for me, is one of those guys that has proven himself now, not only here in Australia, back in Singapore, of course, last year, and just generally with his performances all round, that he is a guy that absolutely has it and should be picked up by someone at the nearest opportunity. Because, yes, we can ask Fred Vasseur the question, do you feel any regret now for dumping Carlos in favour of Lewis? And of course, he's never going to say no. We're never going to get that out of him. Even off the record, I doubt we'll ever get that out of him. But have they made a mistake in dropping Carlos and re-signing Charles? Time will tell. But I tell you what, he's had a hell of a start to the season. He's at one with that car. We know the SF24 what they've done with that car over the winter, it's allowed Ferrari to get on top of the tyre issues it endured last season. Looked magnificent today going around Melbourne's Albert Park. Even Charles Leclerc didn't too bad, but he admitted himself that he wasn't a match for Carlos. So absolutely, someone somewhere, be it Mercedes, be it Red Bull, and you would assume it would have to be one of those top teams, maybe even Aston Martin. We don't know what Fernando Alonso is going to do yet, whether he decides to go. Surely they must be in the running for Carlos's signature. Anything less than one of those three teams, and I really hope that's not the case, I think that would be a big step backwards for Carlos. And I would assume if he did take that big step backwards, he'd be looking and thinking, do I really want to go to a team like that? So for me, it's got to be Red Bull, Mercedes, or Aston Martin. As I say, that's my big takeaway from the weekend. So let's get it out of the way, Nate. As we're talking about it now, what's your big takeaway before we move on to other topics?
My big takeaway, one obviously is that actually I think McLaren, when it's a circuit which suits their car, they have still got the pace. Lando Norris finished P3, Oscar Piastri P4, and actually Norris potentially could have actually probably beaten Leclerc had McLaren pitted him earlier than they did. But for me, the big takeaway has to be Mercedes, and that's our next talking point. Lewis Hamilton obviously retired following a power unit failure, which is a rarity as it is, although it did happen actually to George Russell in Australia last season, so maybe it's just something about Albert Park not liking Mercedes power units. But obviously, Hamilton watched on in the garage as he saw Ferrari, the team he's going to be joining in a matter of months, victorious at 1-2. And then he had to watch on as well as George Russell had on Sainz's last lap, but Russell's penultimate lap. It was all very confusing. A pretty nasty crash, which has resulted, obviously, in the last hour, a 20-second time penalty for Fernando Alonso. It was a nasty crash, and obviously it does seem like Alonso was a bit of a naughty veteran, let's say.
Looks like he wasn't specifically accused of brake testing by the stewards. They did suggest that there wasn't quite enough evidence to throw that at him. But certainly within their submission, they determined that he did certain things that he hadn't done on previous laps, but it wasn't enough, as I say, to accuse him of brake testing. He did do, that's the best way of putting this, referring to the steward's document, which was quite lengthy, by the way. It was quite
Just
thorough on their behalf. It was very thorough. But so, yeah, just basically covering it by saying that there were certain little things that he did that he hadn't done previously that culminated in them suggesting that what he did do was potentially dangerous driving. But they didn't go as far as to suggest it was actual brake testing, because if he had done that, then that would have been clear on the telemetry and they would have punished him even further. So 20 seconds, bearing in mind what they've come out with their submission, I think looking at it, for me, it's fair. And just let people know we've got a poll running on our website. If you want to vote for that, please do so. Give us your thoughts in the comments as always. We're always delighted to hear from you. What about you, Nick? Do you reckon that's fair or not?
I think it's fair. I think something needs to be done at turn 6. And that was something that actually as the top 3 spoke about actually in the cool-down room, how turn 6 now, since they have, remade certain parts of the Albert Park circuit, turn 6 in particular, where it's so fast now. We have had Albon crash there in FP1. Albon crashed there last season as well. We've had Russell have a high-speed crash there. And actually was, I think, quite fortunate to walk away, considering the car quite literally came to rest in the middle of the circuit on its side, which, touchwood, thankfully, everyone behaved under the VSC. Nobody went into him, because that would have been horrific. I think it's the circuit having become faster is more exciting.
Yeah.
But there is now a certain element of actually, yes, it's exciting, but has it become almost too fast? Do they need to either try and extend the runoff and perhaps maybe get rid of the grass on the inside or the gravel on the outside so that the drivers can, control an error? Because, as we saw with Russell, as soon as he lost the rear, he was a passenger. So I think the penalty's fair. I think obviously as Alonso perhaps playing a few games, but obviously it actually had in the end quite a big impact on the points, because obviously Alonso would have finished 6th. He was demoted to 8th. Lance Stroll was then promoted to 6th. Yuki Tsunoda, who you said yesterday was your bold prediction for a top 5, ended up in 7th. That's 6 points for
Not too
RB,
bad.
which, James Vowles was saying how one of the big reasons behind bringing Alex Albon into the car and obviously withdrawing Logan Sargent was because 1 point this season could be the difference between 10th and 6th in the Constructors' Championship. Well, RB have got 6. Haas, with a double points finish in 9th and 10th, have got another 3, so they're on 4 now. So, Tsunoda for me, what a standout drive, but, this is getting worrying already quite quickly now for Alpine, Stake F1, and Williams, because RB and Haas are kind of running away with 6th and 7th.
Yeah, I think from everything that you've just mentioned there, and I think it has to be addressed as well, one of the bigger talking points for me is why on earth was that race not red flagged?
Well, yeah, and that's another one, yeah.
The car is sitting in the middle of the track on its side. How do you not call a red flag for that? I don't know what was going through the minds of the race director and the stewards looking at that, the race director in particular, of course. George Russell over the radio is shouting red flag. He's on his side.
He was terrified.
He knows. You could clearly hear it in his voice. And for anybody that hasn't heard it, do have a listen if you can find a little audio clip. There is one knocking around. He's terrified. His car, the cars are coming his car's like that on its side. Cars are coming in that direction, and he's shouting red flag, red flag. He swears quite naturally.
Yeah,
he wouldn't in that circumstance.
I'd say much worse things. I'll be honest, but
so. I saw a comment from someone saying, "Oh, it was a clever thing of George to start shouting red flag, because then the race would have been stopped and he would have picked up points because of his position on track." Do you really honestly think in that position that's running through George Russell's mind, that he's thinking, "Oh, if they stop the race, I'm going to get some points"? Absolutely no bloody way is he thinking that. He's thinking about his bloody life and another car hitting him from hitting the floor of his car and going through him, pretty much. So yeah, I really would like to know the answer to that question as to why that race was not red flagged. Just to call a VSC poor.
The one thing, in all fairness, I think to the marshals there it's within a second of the incident happening, straight away the double yellows, and actually the drivers did then respect it straight away, because had one driver come around that corner following the accident, at even 80% speed, that could have been a deadly end to the race. And actually, I don't think I've ever seen a car come to rest on its side in the middle of the circuit like the way George's had. It was really weird, actually, because it was, the collision with the barrier wasn't actually at the highest of speeds, but it was more the gravel that seemed to then flick it up.
Yeah, and obviously the wheel tethers did their job brilliantly, of course. But in doing their job brilliantly, that was the catalyst for the car resting on top of a tyre, a wheel that remained tethered to the car. It was using that as almost like a wedge to rest on top of. So yeah, it was just remarkable circumstances. And as you say, but for the grace of God, that no other car had been following behind George and Fernando, because if it had, then without a shadow of a doubt, not without a shadow of a doubt, you can't say, because you've always got to take a driver's reactions into consideration. But yes, it could have been something even more serious than it actually was for George Russell. Yeah, but I still want, getting back to my original point, why wasn't there a red flag? Maybe somebody could answer in the comments section below.
Well, that's good. In the comment section here, let us know, what do you think the VSC was correct? Would you have liked to have seen a red flag? Let us know what you think. And yeah, just quickly, obviously RB and Haas. Well, I say RB, Tsunoda and Haas, spectacular today.
Yeah, as we discussed yesterday, we know that Daniel Ricciardo's got to step up and do his job. At least he managed to climb his way up to 12th. So given the two retirements from Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, he made up 4 places on track, which George Russell as well. So he made 3 places on track effectively. So not too bad for him, but Tsunoda is definitely outperforming him at the moment, both in qualifying and in the race. And Daniel most definitely has got a lot to do to prove himself now, as we have discussed over these next few races, to really thrust himself into contention if he desperately wants that Red Bull seat for next year, as we know he does. And a great result for Haas. Obviously, yes, it took the 3 retirements for them to clamber into 9th and 10th. But this is Grand Prix racing. We know that happens. We know we're not going to get all 20 cars finish as occurred in Saudi Arabia. Whilst it's not uncommon, it does happen, but incidents do play their part, and you've got to be there at the finish, just as we saw in last year's Australian Grand Prix, which was a crash fest and red flag fest and all that went with it. You've got to be there at the checkered flag, and at least the two Haas guys were there today at the checkered flag to mop up those points, desperately needed points for them, because as we know, and as again we've discussed, every point is going to count for those guys that are fighting over those crucial positions in the midfield down to the last positions in the Constructors' Championship, because of the money that's involved. Absolutely huge for them.
Well, of course, it's a point in luxury that could be the difference between 10th and 6th. But obviously, next up we've got the Japanese Grand Prix in a fortnight, where it's always unexpected, both in terms of the race and the weather. Ian, as always, amazing stuff. Let us know in the comment section what you thought of today's race, and who is your star driver. Let us know. From myself and Ian, we will see you soon. Catch you later.
Take care, folks. Thank you.